Le...
We have no sound.
Apologies.
No sound.
They are on mute.
Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, bonjour, good afternoon. My name is Nancy Antil. I'm the Chief of Protocol for the Parliament of Canada and your Master of Ceremonies today. I'm pleased to welcome you to the 22nd Annual Memorial Service of the Canadian Association of Former Parliamentarians in virtual mode again this year. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which our Parliament gathers is a traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabeg people. We thank the Ottawa River Singers for the wonderful honor song that welcomed us today. It is often said that the drum is the heartbeat of Mother Earth. May the beat of the drum and the collective sound of their voices uplift and carry us through our ceremony today. Nous remercions également le quatuor de trombone.
We also thank the trombone quartet of the Central Band of the Canadian Armed Forces who performed the national anthem. We are gathering virtually today to remember the service, contribution, and lives of the parliamentarians we have lost between October 2020 and June 2021.
Speaker of the Senate of Canada, the Honourable George Fury, and the Speaker of the House of Commons, the Honourable Anthony Rota, to offer remarks.
Bonjour, hello. While it is a sorrowful duty, it is also an immense honour to gather virtually to remember the parliamentary friends and colleagues whom we have lost over the last year, and to pay tribute to the memories of those who dedicated themselves to the betterment of the lives of all Canadians. Aujourd'hui, nous prenons
Today is an opportunity to celebrate the lives of those men and women who have distinguished themselves throughout their dedication to public service.
the esteem in which we hold Parliament and our commitment to Canadians, we will always be prepared to set aside our differences, to work together to make a better life for our families, for our communities, for our provinces, and indeed for our great country, Canada. Les nombreuses contributions.
The innumerable contributions of the parliamentarians who have left us leave an everlasting imprint, not only in our institutions, but in our hearts as well.
Their departure is a great loss to us. We are immeasurably enriched for having known them, having worked alongside them, and having had them in our lives. On behalf of all senators, I offer my deepest sympathies to all those who grieve today. Please know that we share your loss and that you are in our thoughts and prayers during this very difficult time.
Fellow parliamentarians, distinguished guests, mesdames et messieurs, our country has now endured more than a year of anxiety, of isolation, and of loss. The COVID-19 pandemic has kept us apart from one another as we struggle to cope with the thousands of ways in which our lives were disrupted. Perhaps the cruelest blow has been for those who have lost a loved one and who have, because of the pandemic, have been unable to mark their passing with the physical presence and support of family and friends. Aujourd'hui,
Today, we honor the memory and the lives of the parliamentarians who have passed away during the past year. During their careers in Parliament, they placed their talents and commitment at the service of their country, and we are grateful to them.
today's commemoration cannot replace the hugs we would give each other if we could, but I'm honored to at least be able to convey my heartfelt condolences on behalf of all members for those colleagues that we have lost. J'offre mes condoléances.
I offer my most sincere condolences to all those who are grieving, a grief that we share with you. Thank you, Mr. Speakers. Every year, the Canadian Association of Former Parliamentarians organizes this ceremony in order to remember and to thank, from the bottom of our hearts, these men and women, parliamentarians and one honorary member, whom we have lost over the past year.
The parliamentarians who have left us, to remember their service and the mark they have left on us, our Parliament, and our country. To accompany us with music, the trombone quartet of the Central Band of the Canadian Armed Forces will perform the Peace Lead. J'invite maintenant la présidente.
I now invite the President and Vice President of the Canadian Association of Former Parliamentarians, Ms. Dorothy Dabi, and the Honourable Eleni Bakopanos to lead us in the reading of the Honour Roll Call.
This past year has been one of the most trying in the immediate memory of our great country. That we have the strength to endure is a tribute to those who came before us. Not only have we faced the dreadful health crisis of COVID and its many restrictions to our freedoms, but we've also faced a profoundly divisive public narrative that seeks to label our fellow Canadians based on artificial differences, when most of us are just trying to live together. And it is the same in our political world. We have different views about process, but at the end of the day, all members of all parties want the same thing: to build a better country together. As BC Indigenous leader Ellis Ross recently said of the reconciliation between Native and newcomer Canadians, "For the first time in my history, Canadians want to be beside First Nations. They want to be beside us. They want to hug. They want to cry. They want to laugh." I think this is a huge opportunity. We don't need big speeches. We just need to be together. When all is said and done, that is what happens with our members. We argue and shake our fists and speak with great emphasis in our Parliament. That's what it's for. But when that is behind us, we come together to celebrate and to mourn. Today we do both, as we reflect on the lives of our former colleagues and extend our heartfelt thanks and sympathy to those they have left behind.
Chers membres de la famille, chers
Family members, colleagues, and friends, this unprecedented pandemic year has challenged all Canadians. It has tested our compassion, our patience, our health, our work ethic, our relationships, our democratic institutions, our leaders, to name just a few of the challenges we have all faced. Our world is forever changed. We have survived, but some of us have faced heartbreaking personal losses. My heartfelt condolences to all those who have lost a loved one this year. I think there is no higher calling in terms of a career than public service, which is a chance to make a difference in people's lives and improve the world. I served in Parliament with many of the colleagues who have left us, and I know that they have made a difference in the lives of their fellow Canadians, including mine.
Tom Berger was the Member of Parliament for Vancouver-Burrard from June 18, 1962 to April 7, 1963. His brief stint as a parliamentarian was a preamble of his future career in public life, first as an NDP MLA and leader of the opposition for British Columbia from 1966 to 1969, and later as a member of BC's Supreme Court. Justice Berger headed the Mackenzie Valley Pipeline Inquiry from 1974 to 1977, calling for a halt to the pipeline until Native land claims were addressed. Native leader George Manuel called it the best statement on Indian rights to come from any government since Europeans first came to Canada. The Honourable David Brayley represented Ontario in the Senate for the Conservative Party, appointed in 2010. In 2019, he was named an Officer of the Order of Canada. David was perhaps best known for his leadership he brought to the Canadian Football League, owning 3 teams over time: the Hamilton Tiger Cats, the BC Lions, and the Toronto Argonauts. David will be remembered for his passionate approach to everything he did: politics, sports, or life itself.
Honourable Claude Castonguay, appointed to the Senate by Prime Minister Brian Mulroney in 1990. The Honourable Claude Castonguay had a long and illustrious career in Quebec as a businessman and an intellect. He wrote a report on universal health care that he adopted when he was Minister of Health in the National Assembly of Quebec. This earned him the title Father of Universal Medicare. He was also one of the inspirations behind the Quiet Revolution. During his brief tenure in the Senate, he co-chaired the Joint House-Senate Committee on the Renewal of Canada until he retired from service due to ill health.
Mr. Dobell was made an honorary member of the CAFP in 2006 in recognition of his near 4 decades of support for the Parliament of Canada. He established the Parliamentary Centre in 1968, Centre for Legislative Exchange in 1971, and the Parliament Business and Labour Trust in 1986. He received the Order of Canada in 1991.
L'Honorable Marisa Ferretti.
The Honourable Marisa Ferretti Barth was appointed to the Senate by Prime Minister Jean Chrétien in 1997. In private life, she was a social worker who established 84 seniors clubs for Italian Canadians and helped found a seniors club for Chinese Canadians in Montreal, as well as seniors organizations for other ethnic groups. Born in Italy, she was made a Grand Officer of the Order of Merit of the Italian Republic in 2003. In 2008, she was made an Officer of the National Order of Quebec.
Claude Gervin Fretz. For more than 14 years, Gerv Fretz, a progressive conservative, represented the riding of Erie, Ontario. Prior to that, he served as mayor and regional councillor of the city of Fort Erie. He served as parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Indian and Northern Affairs and to the Minister of State for Mines. He served on the House Standing Committee for External Affairs and for Defense.
L'Honorable Alfonso Galliano.
The Honorable Alfonso Galliano was the Liberal Member of Parliament for Saint-Nord for 18 years. He served as Minister of Labour and then as Minister of Public Works and Government Services. He served for a brief time as Ambassador to Denmark. Upon retiring from public life, he ran a vineyard in Quebec's eastern townships.
The Honourable Ron Irwin was the Liberal MP for Sault Ste. Marie. He served as a school board trustee and city councillor before being elected to Parliament, where he served as the Minister of Indian Affairs and Northern Development. He was appointed Canadian Ambassador to Ireland and later Canadian Consul General in Boston. He always took great pride in being involved in his community and country.
Georges Lachance.
Georges Lachance was a lawyer by profession and was the Liberal MP for La Fontaine from 1962 to 1974. He was succeeded by his son, Claude-André Lachance, who served from 1974 to 1984.
Carole Lavallée a été la députée bloc.
Carole Lavallée was the Bloc Québécois MP for Saint-Bruno-Saint-Hubert from 2004 to 2011. She served as the Bloc's critic for Labour. She had a reputation for bringing people together in a common cause to make a better world.
The Right Honourable Don Mazankowski. Known as a humble and principled man, the Right Honourable Don Mazankowski devoted his life to public service for the betterment of his nation. He was a progressive conservative member for Vegreville from 1968 to 1993, serving as Minister of Transport under Prime Minister Joe Clark and as Deputy Prime Minister and House Leader, and then Minister
Just hit
of Finance
something that said
under Prime
on mute
Minister
audio.
Brian Mulroney. In 2010, the Canadian Association of Former Parliamentarians recognized his service with a Lifetime Achievement Award. He received the Order of Canada in 2000 and was promoted to companion in 2013.
L'Honorable Elaine.
The Honorable Elaine McCoy, a former Alberta MLA, the Honorable Elaine McCoy was appointed to the Senate by Prime Minister Paul Martin in 2005. She was a founding member of the Independent Senators Group and became its first leader. She lived a full life inspired by intellectual curiosity and public service, and was known for her fairness and for being a tireless champion of the people she served.
Howie Meeker lives on in memory as a Canadian hockey legend. He also served 2 years from 1951 to 1953 as a Conservative Member of Parliament for Waterloo South, while still playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs. It was a tough life trying to serve two such compelling masters, so he returned to hockey full-time. After retiring from the ice, he became the Don Cherry of his time as a color commentator for Hockey Night in Canada. Howie was inducted into the Order of Canada in 2010.
John Mullally.
John Mullally was the Liberal Member of Parliament from King's PEI from 1963 to 1965. He spent much of his working life in public service, holding several deputy minister positions in Nova Scotia. He was an inspiring singer and a vigorous walker.
Honorable Robert Peterson. Appointed to the Senate for Saskatchewan in 2005 by Prime Minister Paul Martin, the Honorable Robert Peterson was active on Senate committees. He worked on land claims on the Aboriginal Peoples Committee. He also addressed rural poverty, giving a voice to people who felt they were not being heard. In later years, he was on the Energy and Environment Committee and assisted with the creation of a Canadian energy plan. Alan Peets. Former Mayor of Welland, Ontario from 1965 to 1978, Alan Peets ran several times for federal office and was elected as a Progressive Conservative in 1984. As an MP, he served on two royal committees, one for the fur industry and the other for women's rights. He is remembered as a larger-than-life politician. Stanley Schumacher. The Progressive Conservative Member of Parliament for Palliser from 1968 to 1979, Stan Schumacher later became the MLA in Alberta, where he served as Deputy Speaker. In 2003, Stan was presented with the Queen's Jubilee Medal, having earlier received the Silver and Golden Jubilee medals. The Honourable Nick Taylor was appointed to the Senate representing Bonaccord and Sturgeon in 1996, after a long career in the Legislative Assembly of Alberta, where he also served as the leader of the Alberta Liberal Party after losing a bid for a federal seat. Nick loved a good debate, and his comments were filled with quips, quotes, and humour, but he always supported his opponents.
Marcel R. Tremblay.
Marcel R. Tremblay was the Progressive Conservative member for Sainte-Anne-de-Beaupré from 1984 to 1993. He was Parliamentary Secretary for the President of the Privy Council, for the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance, Fitness and Amateur Sport and Youth. Marcel served as the Treasurer for the Canadian Association of Former Parliamentarians, retiring in February 2021.
Ian Waddell seemed immortal, larger than life itself, and it was unthinkable that his boundless energy would ever be dimmed, his cheerful, kindly, irreverent voice ever silenced, wrote his friend Sven Robinson. Ian was the MP for Port Moody, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam from 1979 to 1993 for the New Democratic Party. He was elected to the BC legislature in 1996 and served as Minister of Environment, Lands and Parks and Small Business and Tourism. Ian was also a movie maker and a tireless champion for youth. He was the president of the Educational Foundation of the Canadian Association of Former Parliamentarians. In his final act, Ian stood on his Vancouver balcony and took a picture of the sunset, posting it to Facebook and saying good night to all. Then he quietly passed during the night. It is so hard to say goodbye to all these friends and colleagues who gave so much of their lives to the service of others. The public knows little about how their sacrifices changed the lives of all around them, because politics is a dictatorial master that demands a member's first allegiance and full attention. But we can all be proud of what they did, no matter for how long or how briefly. They all put their personal lives on the line to serve a cause greater than themselves. They did this in the name of democracy and freedom for all Canadians. Each made a vital contribution to the country that is one of the finest in the world despite our warts and missteps. We are an open and generous people, and we thank all those who served in Parliament for preserving and adding to the greatness of our democracy.
Je vais terminer en citant l'une de nos
I will end by quoting one of our former colleagues, the leader of the New Democratic Party, the Honorable Jack Layton, whose parting words resonate with me, especially during this unprecedented year, and I quoted him in the language he wrote. Mes amis, l'amour.
Optimism is better than despair. So let us be loving, hopeful, and optimistic, and we'll change the world. J'espère que les...
I hope the families and friends of our former colleagues find solace in knowing that their loved ones left this world a better place for all of us. May their memory be eternal.
We will now observe a moment of silence as the wreath is laid. It will be followed by the lament, played by Corporal Timothy Reid of the Central Band of the Canadian Armed Forces. Each of the men and women whose public service we are remembering today have, in their own ways, contributed to who we are as a country, and count among those who have helped shape Canada. We're truly honored to have celebrated their lives and accomplishments with you today, and we pay tribute to you, their loved ones, who miss them dearly. Notre cérémonie virtuelle.
Our virtual ceremony is now drawing to a close. Thank you for being here. I would also like to highlight the contribution and dedication of all of our colleagues and partners at today's ceremony. Thank you.